Well, here's a fun little story for you. Donald Trump has just declared that Antifa, or the anti-fascists as they like to call themselves, are a major terror organization. He took to Truth Social and this is what he posted. I am pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster, as a major terrorist organization. I will be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Thank you for your attention to this matter. He always puts that at the end of his tweets. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Anyway, I can't say I'm surprised, right? After what happened to Charlie Kirk, and I don't know if Charlie Kirk's shooter was specifically involved with Antifa, but what we do know is that he was a radical left-wing activist. He was a radical lefty. And so it doesn't really surprise me that there's a lot of blowback coming against the left now, because for far too long, particularly on social media platforms like Reddit and Blue Sky, these people have been encouraging, celebrating, and frankly, in many cases, inciting violence. And I guess Donald Trump is saying that's not going to wash anymore. Let's get into it. Now, before we get into the meat of this topic, there's an argument that I've seen people on the left making, and I just want to address it because it makes no sense whatsoever. You have to be pretty dumb to believe this. But it goes along the lines of, well, Trump has just banned Antifa, the anti-fascists, and that proves that Donald Trump is a fascist. And the reason that this argument is so weak and terrible and stupid is because it implies that calling yourself something actually makes you that thing. So if the KKK had called themselves the good guys, then actually that would make them the good guys, right? And similarly, Antifa calling themselves anti-fascists actually means that they are anti-fascists. It's ridiculous. The argument makes no sense whatsoever. Let me give you another real-world example. The DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Well, that must be democratic because they've called themselves democratic. Except that's not South Korea, that's North Korea. Okay? The last three leaders, it's gone from grandfather to father to son, and yet you're trying to tell me that they're democratic because they've got democratic in the name. So simply calling yourselves the anti-fascist doesn't actually make you anti-fascist. And when we get to the point where you are specifically trying to get rid of your political opponents, not through debate, not through winning arguments, but through intimidation and political violence, I don't think that's anti-fascist at all. I think that is literally just fascism. So we'll leave that argument there. A few people I've seen are making it. They're probably brain donors, would be my guess. It is what it is. Terrible argument. God help anyone who says that. Anyway, this situation is actually a little bit more complicated than people realise, because here in the UK, if your organisation is declared as a proscribed group, that's really meaningful. That means that any expression of support or actual support to that organisation is a criminal matter. And we saw this recently with Palestine Action. They were proscribed, and then we saw people holding placards saying, I support Palestine Action, while they were all getting arrested, because that is a criminal offence. It's different in America. When it comes to domestic organizations, they cannot be prescribed in the same way. Membership of them cannot be banned. Expressing support for them cannot be banned. And that's because of the First Amendment. Now, I will say it's different when it comes to overseas organizations. So something like Al-Qaeda, which is obviously not based in America, they can be prescribed, and any kind of support for them would be criminal. But yeah, when it comes to domestic organizations, which I presume Antifa, they're going to say are a domestic organization, they can't be prescribed in the same way. And the result of that is, this is kind of a symbolic gesture, but it doesn't mean that there's nothing Donald Trump can do. Take a listen to this.
Do you have plans, and actually this is a great opportunity with all these, do you plan on designating Antifa finally a domestic terror organization?
Well, it's something I would do, yeah. If I have support from the people back here, I think we'd start with Pam, I think. But I would, if you give me, I would do that 100%, and others also, by the way. But Antifa is terrible.
Are there other groups that you can make up?
There are other groups, yeah, there are other groups. We have some pretty radical groups, and they got away with murder. And also, I've been speaking to the Attorney General about bringing RICO against some of the people that you've been reading about that have been putting up millions and millions of dollars for agitation. These aren't protests. These are crimes, what they're doing, where they're throwing bricks at cars of ICE and Border Patrol.
So in that clip, you heard Donald Trump talking about the RICO Act. And that is an American law, federal law, that was introduced to help prosecutors deal with gangs and mafias. Because here's the problem that they had. you have these guys on the ground, okay, the low-level gang members or mafia members who were committing crimes, but the guys at the top were completely untouchable. Even though they were offering them support, financial assistance, they were effectively, you know, the bosses of these guys, they couldn't do anything about it. And so this act was brought in to basically say, if a guy on the ground commits some kind of crime, and you have been supporting him with ill-gotten funds, then you yourself are liable for what he has done. Now that's really fascinating because it means that basically the approach of the Trump organization now is to treat Antifa as if they're a gang. And not just to go after the guys on the ground who are committing low-level criminal activity, low-level, but that doesn't mean not serious. I'm talking about them, you know, damaging property and starting riots and things like that. Well, of course they will go after those guys still, but they're also going to go after the more senior people and the guys who are funding this. And that's why they're using the RICO Act. Now that is fascinating to me, and I think it'll be really interesting to see if they can actually pull that off and get rid of some of these people who are funding these radical left organizations, because the sentences under the RICO Act are not small. We're talking about like 25 years or even life sentences. So this should put the fear of God into those people who are donating money to these organizations, who are funding it, who are enabling it, who are giving tacit support. We'll see what happens, but I think this is very, very interesting. Maybe we need a bit of a RICO Act here in the UK. Speaking of the UK, does that mean that we're going to see Antifa banned here? Well, I don't know. We typically do follow the United States on these kinds of matters, and in fact, on just about everything, usually about 3 or 4 years behind. But do I think that we're going to see Antifa banned here? I'm not convinced, and I'll tell you the reason why. If you look at Antifa in America, they are linked to an extraordinary amount of violence and damage and destruction. Whereas here in the UK, it's really not the same, okay? They may call themselves the same organization, but it's not actually like a proper organization. They just sort of wave the same flag. And what we don't have here in the UK, please do correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about this, and you've got links to news articles, but what we don't have, as far as I can tell, are like Antifa groups going out and actually causing violence and disruption. I don't see that here in the UK, certainly not anywhere near to the scale that they have in America. So I think they're almost two distinct organizations who just happen to sort of fly the same flag, basically. Now, if I've got that wrong, and if there's sort of evidence that the police or the Home Secretary or whatever has, when looking at this and saying, actually, no, they are plotting these kinds of things, we're just managing to stop the vast majority of them, then yeah, that's a different story, then perhaps they should be prescribed. But I don't want to really go down the route of saying they should be banned absolutely just because I disagree with them. Now, I think in America, it does make a lot of sense because, I mean, you can see some of the social media posts coming from Americans after what happened to Charlie Kirk, and you see sort of Discord chat posts and Reddit and Blue Sky and all of these comments that people are making. People need to be reminded that this kind of thing is just totally unacceptable. But I just don't see quite the same level of stuff here in the UK. Of course, we have seen it. We saw it with the Oxford Union president saying some pretty not pleasant comments about Charlie Kirk. But even those comments weren't as bad as some of the ones I've seen coming out of America. I don't know. I don't like Antifa. But do I want to just prescribe and ban organizations because I don't like them? Not really. Okay, Antifa probably do. For sure, they want to do that. And yet, because I don't want to do that, somehow I'm the fascist in their eyes. Whatever, make it make sense. I don't know. Anyway, I'll probably leave the video there. I've been taking a couple of days off, primarily because of the weather. This is the best day we've had so far, no rain. Might be a good day tomorrow, so I might film another video. But yeah, I'm working on an indoor space. Basically, I'm taking my garage, clearing out all of the crap out of the garage into the shed to the extent that I can. And it's kind of like a man cave in there anyway. I've got like a home gym and some TV and stuff. And I'm going to try and build somewhere indoor that I can film with a desk and a camera and microphone. I don't really do things half-heartedly. I know that might seem ridiculous because I'm just sort of walking the dog. Speaking of the dog, come on. I'm just walking the dog and talking to a camera, but I tend not to do things half-heartedly. I like to put thought into things, get things right. And so I'm going to do that with this setup. But it will give me somewhere indoors that I can film when the weather is terrible. Because we've basically just got like, I look at the weather forecast for the next 10 days and it's just rain for the vast majority of it, which is pretty frustrating when you're the guy who walks in a field with his dog and talks to a camera. And the reason I can't do it when it's raining is, first of all, it's kind of just miserable. I tend to take the dog for really short walks when it's raining. But secondly, I mentioned it before that the microphone can get wet and damaged, and people were like, well, just cover it up. It's not this part of the mic, it's the part that attaches to the camera. And these microphones are like 200 quid. So anyway, long story short, I'm looking at cameras, lenses, computers, desks, chairs. Going to try and build something indoors. I will still try and do as much outdoors filming as I can because I know people love to see the British countryside, but it just gives me a backup option. So that's kind of what I'm working on in the background. And yeah, I'll leave it there. Sorry, bit of a ramble. You probably don't care about all of that. Please do like, comment, subscribe if I haven't bored you to death. And hopefully I'll see you in a future video.